What's up, everybody? It's Rebel Inc.'s art here again with another... Gosh darn it, stupid... It's not a character design challenge. It's Creative Corner. Welcome to Creative Corner, guys. I'm a little scatterbrained today. But as you can see from the name of this video, I'm doing my own modern redrawing of Snow White. This is something that's grown in popularity, I don't want to say recently, it's been going on for quite a while now, but I've seen quite a few different YouTubers doing it, and I wanted to give it my own, my own little try. And the reason I wanted to do that is because, while a lot of people focus on just doing the aesthetics of the princesses, one of my biggest, frustrations, sort of, with older time princesses is that they've got really, really great stories to them, but just the way they're told, doesn't really communicate with a modern day audience. A lot of kids look at princesses like Snow White or Cinderella and they don't understand really what the story was about, what they were trying to convince, and just see it as, helpless princess gets saved by a prince. And so one thing I really wanted to explore with this was how can we retell this kind of story with these same morals and principles in a way that a modern audience would understand. So I started with Snow White because she is the very first princess. I'm going to be going through all of them chronologically, most likely. I don't want to make anything definite because sometimes you get burnt out, and I don't want to make promises in case something happens and I end up dropping the project. But I'm starting with Snow White, and Snow White is a character that I did not like growing up. I thought she was boring. I hated her singing voice, but that's a personal preference. I thought the movie was silly, and the sequence where she runs into the forest scared me half to death. And just, before we get into it, I'm making a little base that I'm going to draw both the original version and my personal version on. And I took inspiration for that from Lavender Town's videos. It was actually watching her couple of videos like this that got me inspired to do my own personal little take on it. What was I saying? I was talking about the original Snow White, but movies like that and like Cinderella I didn't really enjoy growing up. And it wasn't until just recently, really, that I started really loving these princesses, because I looked at them and I realized a lot of their stories were stories similar to what I experienced growing up in life. And it was only, after moving out and just kind of realizing a lot of things about myself that I really started to love her and Cinderella and others of the old Disney princesses, because they tell a story of kindness despite adversity, which is something I feel like a lot of kids could really benefit from these days. Not just because, it's a good story, but also just because, I don't want to bash on things, but in this day and age, one of the main, kind of common ways that we are taught to handle bad things in our life is to kind of joke about them and be negative about them as a way of making them seem less serious, which I won't lie is a very helpful strategy. By kind of turning, our struggles into jokes, we're able to better compress them and figure out how to handle them. But a lot of times I see this kind of mentality turn people really negative. And as somebody who had to really, deeply fight to get that kind of negativity out of my system and just become a nicer person, stories like these where the main focus is on this character facing really horrible things and remaining nice through it all, I think is something very important that a lot of kids could really benefit from. So I guess I just kind of wanted to talk about, what I feel like this main story and morals is to Snow White, and then talk about how we could reinterpret that into a modern setting. In my eyes, and keep in mind, I haven't watched this in a while. I wanted to watch it while I was working on this, but it's not on Netflix, and if I went to go borrow my copy from my parents, it would have been a day late for this video, so I just went ahead and went off my memory. But to me, Snow White was always a story about somebody who, she's 14 and she's faced with all kinds of unkindness and cruelty from the people she is supposed to trust. And despite this, she maintains her kindness. She maintains her, selflessness. And in the end, although it's not really heavily focused on, all this kindness and this love that she kept putting into the world is finally given back to her. And that's something I feel like is a very important message to put out to young kids, that not everyone is going to give you the same amount of love you give to them. Not everyone is going to treat you with the same kindness that you give to them. But eventually, one way or another, that love will make its way back to you. And until then, you just have to keep your kindness alive and keep fighting and being the person that you need in your life. And that was kind of always what Snow White was to me. She was this character who, her stepmother was her only relative. She was alone in this world. She was treated unkindly. She was not given the things that she really needed to survive. She was given the bare minimum by way of care. And yet, despite all this, she kept loving and hoping and working towards survival. Her role in a story was never a passive one. Every single moment we see Snow White, she is actively making a decision to continue being kind and continue working hard, despite the fact that there is no real reason or motivation for her to continue working or cleaning or being kind or continuing on. At any given point, she could have just given up and said, all right, these people want me dead. There's no one in this world that really wants me alive. Why bother? Let me just go ahead and die. But she continues to fight against this and continues to be kind and loving and compassionate to people who give her nothing in return. And through that, she is able to win her own happy ending. And that's, I think, something that's really important, for kids to hear. And I'm not entirely sure how we would interpret that into a modern setting. I guess the main thing would be just to more actively show her making this decision to be kind. Just kind of to get inside of her head, to show kids that this isn't just something that comes naturally to her, that this is a challenge that she has to undergo. She has to remind herself constantly to be kind and to be patient, to be loving. Because that is a very difficult decision to make some days. And not only that, but to show her being more actively rewarding it. Show her something that happens after she's woken up by her prince. Continue to follow her afterwards. Show what her life is like, where her happiness finally gets to find its way back to her, where these things that she's been putting out into the world are finally given back to her in return. And I think the queen's role is something that I would, in a modern retelling, would love to see be a bit more active, because, a lot of parents like the evil step queen exist in real life. And I think this is where a lot of the apple would come into play. In a lot of, modern adaptations of Snow White, we see her with, an iPhone, because it's a really quality pun. But I think the apple represents more of a betrayal. The apple is her putting her trust and faith into both a stranger and into somebody who's supposed to look out for her, and that is simultaneously someone she's never known and also the evil queen in disguise. It represents someone taking someone's kindness and someone's faith and using it for their own gain. And I think this could be interpreted in a lot of different ways, but mainly just in the evil queen herself, how every single tiny little thing she does for Snow White is used as a way to get what she wants out of her. The roof over her head, the clothes on her back, all of these things are ways for the queen to claim that she is doing good for Snow White, that she is helping her. And because of this, it's something that she deserves to be repaid for. And we could see this slowly progress through the story and get more and more intense. And I think this would be an important, message to get out there, because a lot of kids do have to deal with this in their home or with their friends or with other role models in their lives, such as teachers or mentors. And I think showing it, especially through somebody as powerful as Disney, and showing that this is not an okay way for adults in your life to act, or for people who are supposed to care about you in your life to act, and show that even if this is something that's occurring to you, it is not your fault, and that you aren't a bad person for continuing to love them or care for them. And I kind of went off on a little tangent there. I get really passionate about these kinds of things. But that's just kind of my little beginning dive into a modern retelling of Snow White. And now I really want to go back and rewatch the old movie. It's a really cute little film, and it kind of birthed an empire that means a lot to me and has given a lot to me. So yeah, I hope you guys like this. I need to look at the list of what Disney movies came out when, but I believe either Cinderella or Sleeping Beauty is next. I'll have to double check on that one, but I hope you guys are excited for this idea. If not, just go ahead and let me know, and I'll go ahead and put it on a back burner and maybe like have it come out on a different day and keep doing different creative corner things. But until then, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys like my modern Snow White. And I hope you have a lovely day, okay? I will see you all in the next video. Bye-bye! I love you!